Ahoy there, Lorcana fans, and welcome back to the second episode of Local Lore, a podcast for Lorcana players who believe the best games happen in their own backyard. I'm Ian, and with me is my beautiful girlfriend, Lindsay.
Hey there.
We have a fun new episode because, as you all probably know, Reign of Jafar will drop this weekend.
Woohoo!
So for today's episode, we're going to be wrapping up our thoughts on the Set Championship Series, giving you the final reports of how we did. We will be offering some advice for your release weekend events, some tips for sealed and draft and building good decks in a limited format. And then we will also be offering some tips for the new casual or budget players. They're still trying to catch up their collections as Reign of Jafar drops. So
Yeah.
we started last time with an icebreaker.
Oh, yeah.
So Lindsay, here's a tough one for you. I think that was hard for me to think about.
Wasn't as hard for me.
What gameplay habit are you trying to break, or what new habit are you trying to form?
It's more of a gameplay habit that I'm trying to break.
Okay.
It's funny, in my evolution as a competitive player, I feel like I started off playing really slow, but I was really susceptible to when another player, when I was playing with somebody with more experience, started to play fast, that I would try to keep up with them and mimic their play. It was in my mind, it was oh, if you're a good player, you play fast. And so it's funny because as I've gotten more comfortable with the game, as I've turned out a bunch more matches, I have sped up each of my rounds. But I have a bad habit of making small mistakes. And so my habit that I'm trying to break is going too fast. And so taking a moment to pause before I say pass, make sure that I've done everything I needed to do, and thinking through my whole turn. I'm a blurple player, which involves a lot of bouncing. And so there's buffs, there's questing that needs to happen before you bounce, challenging at certain times. So making sure that I don't feel rushed and that I take my time to think through my turns before I do them.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. It's really easy to especially when you're playing in an event and you see the clock and you're like, oh gosh, I feel the pressure to play fast. But I think it's key to know what moments matter that you should slow down and just double check your homework. You know? Yeah, that's a good one. I think I see that from a lot of people. So and I've heard that before. So yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think mine...
Trying to break or build a new habit?
Well, I think I'm trying to... It's kind of both. I think I'm definitely susceptible to feeling tournament pressure. And Lindsay and Gibby are my two people that are sort of the closest to the ground when I'm going into a tournament. And so they've heard me just with a lot of negative sort of talk and negative self-talk leading up to events. And I think I would like to see myself have a better, more optimistic attitude going into event, because once I'm playing, it usually evens out throughout the day. Even when I've had a couple tough games, I'm usually I get in the swing of it. I don't have those nerves, but I think those nerves will make me feel a lot more pessimistic. Not so much in my head. I don't really feel like it affects my play, but it affects my mood. And I want to just be able to enjoy the first round or two of an event before settling in.
You're very dialed in right in the beginning.
I think, and I don't know if it helps me. So anyway, so I just think, getting a little bit more, feeling a little bit less of that tournament pressure, I think would be nice. So, well, let's go ahead and jump into the lore drop, aka this is the segment where we talk about our what happened at locals, what happened, what's the local goss, what have we been doing? You know what I'm saying?
Spill the tea.
That's right.
So we want to talk about our personal experiences in our set champ. So this set champ season was a little bit different for us. May has been an incredibly busy month in our personal lives. It's, you got Mother's Day, you've got holidays, it's finally warm, so everybody wants to make plans.
Everyone wants to get married.
People want to get married. How dare they? Don't they know it's tournament season? Memorial Day weekend is another one of those.
So much.
So anyway, there was a lot of conflicting events on our calendar. So typically during set champ season, we'll go to a tournament, at least one a weekend. Sometimes it's two. because we really enjoy the competitive play. We play until Ian gets a match. I'm just kidding.
No, usually I'll play even after that.
I was going to say, even then, typically we'll continue to play and have fun. So it's a great time for us to I love it because we get to see, there's people that we only see at tournaments. We don't get to see them because they don't play in our league. They play at a different store. We have a very healthy scene here in Richmond, Virginia. So anyway, so our set champ season, we got to compete. How many did we do? 3?
You played in 3. Yes, I played in 2. We went to 3 total.
Yeah, we went to 3 total.
Because I ran the third one. Yeah.
So I had to take on the charge of bringing home the bacon. So I brought home 3 heroes myself. It was by far the best showing of any set champs I've had so far. I think the first few set champs, I got to a top 8 one time, and then I've kind of inched my way up there. It's certainly helpful that the whole top 8 gets heroes. That's why. But yeah, it was a great experience. The first tournament we played at was pretty small. It was only a 16-player tournament, so it was 4 rounds of Swiss cut to top 4. That one, I'll admit, I got a little lucky, and my numbers helped me bubble in. I had some good tiebreakers there. And so I bubbled into the top 8 at the last minute. And then our second set champs, that was a tournament that Ian ran. That was at our local store, Unplugged, in Richmond, Virginia. Super great tournament. I had a rough start because I was up against Steel Song, which is my worst matchup. I started against Steel Song in the first 2 tournaments. So it was a little bit of a start with an 0-2 and claw your way back. Snuck my way into top 8, played another really competitive player in the area who's got certainly a couple of mats of his own. And I was really nervous because his wife plays purple too. So I was like, oh, he knows this matchup. But I got a win, made it to the second round.
You were in top 4, which was your best finish yet.
My best finish yet was in top 4. Then the adrenaline really started to kick in. So, but I lost to a really awesome player named Erin in our local area, and she went on to win the whole thing. So, can't be too mad about that.
That's right.
And then finally, in the last tournament that we played in, I had a really strong start to the day. I 2-0'd my first 2 matches, and then I had a loss to another really great competitive player. It was a rough loss because I was 1 ink away from being able to bounce and go for the win. We all know that feeling. So
yes. Oh my gosh.
But and then Ian and I got paired.
Yeah, that was a wild one because we sat there. We're like, round 4 out of 5. What the heck do we do here?
We got paired round 4, so we were trying to decide if it was best for us to split. To even out the points, if we should play for it, if you win one.
Yeah.
The best is we decided to play for it and we split anyway.
Yep.
So, but we both made it into top 8, and I lost to a hyper aggro deck in top 8, which was devastating. But that player went on to get second place in the tournament. So all in all, it was a really good set champs. I think this set was a lot different for me because So after last set champs, Ian gave me the advice that maybe I should stop trying to pick a new deck or a new color combination each set and really find one that was speaking to me and I was enjoying. And I picked Blurple because it was the deck I had the most fun. And even if it wasn't as competitive at the time, I was like, this is the deck that I have fun playing win or lose versus like a deck that I train hard in and then lose. And so I decided to try and master that color combination. And so this set champ season, and season leading up to
this whole set 7.
The whole set 7, and it was kind of a wild set because mid-set, we got some card bans, which really changed the meta. Mm-hmm. And so I had been playing Blurple before that. And then after the bans, there's a awesome Blurple content creator, JDR, who's done a lot of work with Blurple. He really changed up the deck, and so I was trying to copy that, and it really changed the style of play. Yeah. But I stuck with it. So at the first tournament, I had JDR's list, kind of a few little tech cards for our area. Mm-hmm. But after that, I was really missing. The spoiler is that the deck really didn't have any 1-drops besides Bell. The Bell pops obstacle combo. And so I decided to go back to what I knew and loved with some of the bounce cards. I still kept the bell combo for Blurple. So yeah, anyway, I spent a lot of time. I also spent a lot of mornings sipping my coffee, playing games online on that, little Lorcana training site that I don't know if I'm supposed to name.
Yeah, the testing site that shall not be named.
Testing site that shall be named. It's funny, Ian and I have talked about this. Ian personally, he with a trading card background, is very burnt out on digital card games. He loves to play in person, and while I love playing in person, the best thing for me sometimes is just reps, just getting to play against a bunch of different decks, getting to see what works, and kind of from the convenience of your own couch while sipping coffee. So my morning ritual is to sit on my couch and sip my coffee while my cat sit and play some Lorcana. So while my cat's in my lap. So I think the sheer number of games I played was way different. That, and having spent then 2 sets on a specific color combination, really nailing down why each card was in the deck, like making adjustments, seeing what worked.
And I think if we talk about too, like your growth as a competitor, I think you kicked the nervousness that you'd had in previous sets, where you'd get so wound up tight, and then that first round you would feel like you weren't playing well. You would always say, like, I was just so nervous that I didn't play good in my first round. And even though in this series you were playing Steel Songs, I know that you would walk away from that first round being like, I played well, I played it close. One of them, I think you were really close to getting the upset. So that's something I noticed, and I think that comes probably from comfort in your deck selection and the ability that you've played enough reps with it that you feel like if you walk into something blind, you'll be able to adapt. Yeah.
I think it's kind of funny. I let go of, I guess, what I would say some of the stereotypes of, and maybe when I first started playing in tournaments, you'd be like, oh, you don't want people to know your color combination right off the bat. You want to keep it secret. Like, there was all these things where I was like trying to game the system, and I was like, I really just need to work on being the best player that I can be. And not worrying so much about the competition, remembering that I'm playing for the love of the game. And I think that's why the advice of finding a color combination really helped me, because now you're like, I love this deck. I will champion this deck. I have fun while I'm playing it. Losing doesn't feel as good as winning, but it's still fun.
And walking away from each event being like, I got to play my favorite deck.
Exactly.
Like, and doing that, and I think that was when we talked about this after you'd kind of been jumping from deck to deck to deck, I was like, the nice thing about picking something and learning it is that at first you might walk away, from events having not succeeded, but you will at least have walked away having fun. And now you got to do both. It was. Which was so cool to see.
So, but I didn't come home with a champion, Matt. So let's hear about your set champ experience.
Well, it was honestly, I mean, I say this, it was a surprise. I had sort of, again, like, knowing that we couldn't just play in 5 events and really try to go all out and min-max the opportunity. Like, the opportunity was two chances, and especially with them removing the second place mat, which is always kind of a bummer. Like, I've never really cared if I got the champion mat versus the non-champion mat, because to me, just getting to the finals is a journey, and so I have like a non-champion Stitch and a non-champion Mirabelle mat that I use all the time. And I think I always like that, because you get to the finals and both players tend to just relax a little bit, which is cool. But that wasn't the case this season. So half the opportunity even from that.
Yeah.
So I I didn't have a great, as we talked about last time, I didn't have a great first tournament with Emerald Steel, and I dropped that deck, and I made Lindsay promise to never let me take discard to a tournament again, because not only did it not perform well, I didn't really enjoy it. Like, I didn't find playing discard to be satisfying, like, just from the fun component, like you were talking about. And so I went back to the drawing board. I thought about playing Ruby Amethyst. I wasn't liking how it was playing into a few things. And so I switched to Emerald Amethyst Tempo.
Well, and we also have a very... In the tournaments that we had seen so far, there had been a whole lot of Steel Song and some other different, decks in the meta. And while it's a very wide meta right now, I feel like you were trying to make a half-decent meta call.
Right, and I think I largely succeeded. It was interesting. I wanted to pick a deck because I knew we had a lot of aggro in our area. And I also detailed all of this in another video on the channel, which you can go and watch. If you want to hear more and me wax poetic about Emerald Amethyst. I won't do that to you here, I promise. But I did sort of say I wanted a deck that I felt had a way to beat Steel Song, but that didn't fold to aggro, because I knew there's a lot of aggro in our area. And so I picked Emerald Amethyst because it had a good way to beat Steel Song. It was a very weird way to play the game, where you try to mulligan really hard for Ursula Deceiver and or Kit Cloud Kicker, and then you just don't quest anything until you can challenge singers, and you just sort of try to really grind the game down, which is weird to say. But it was a cool deck, and I really enjoyed it. It was also cool because I got to test it with my dad, who was also going to play the same 60 as me. And then the morning of the tournament, his refrigerator exploded. Not literally exploded, but like everything broke, and he had to save all the food in the house, and he had to try to fix it, and it was just a whole thing. And I felt so bad. So, but we got to test it together, which was really fun. Getting to do that with my dad. So took the list, and it was funny because I got there and I felt like the field was actually not that great. I saw a lot of my bad matchups like being played in the room, but I was able to overcome some of those bad matchups and turn them from what probably should have been 0-2s into 1-1s and sometimes even into 2-0s. And then I was fortunate enough again, and I think this is where the deck selection really paid off for me, because then I got into top 8, and there were multiple good matchups in top 8. 2 Ruby Amethysts, which are really pretty good matchup for me, and 2 Hyper Aggros, which I ended up playing both of them in top 8. I got... again, it was a matchup I felt very confident in. I practiced it, and then I played into a red-blue in top 4, and I practiced that a lot. I knew it was hard, but winnable if you make the right choices, and it's funny, it's like if you're gutsy. It's like, that's one of the matchups where you just kind of have to
go for it.
You have to go for it. That's one of the few matchups you go all in on. Like, you're the aggro player. You have to do it. You can't be too cautious, but you do have to play around everything.
Right.
So anyways, and
can't let them buy any extra turns, but also if I go too hard and they B-prep me, I'm over. So.
Yeah. So it's just, on a razor's edge the whole time, but I think I played pretty well. I got a little lucky in that matchup, and then I got to the finals, played another hyper aggro, and it was really just the deck that my deck could handle the most consistently, either on the play or on the draw, so I was able to get the win. So felt really good. It was a great tournament. Shout out to Modern Tabletop in
awesome
Chesterfield. Great store, great staff. Thanks to Michael for judging. That was big highlight of the weekend. And the crazy thing, this is like just shameless bragging. I hope the people that were at the tournament don't hear this, because we went home with the prize packs.
Oh yeah, oh no.
We went home with the 20 prize packs, and we cracked 7 legendaries.
Yeah,
and 2 enchanteds. It was insane.
Yeah. You cracked it enchanted on the first pack and the last pack of the 20 that we opened, which was nuts.
It's crazy. I don't know if they had finished one box and gave me part of another box. That's how it happened. But yeah, 20 packs.
It was crazy. We won't see any enchanteds for Reign of Jafar. We've used up all our enchanted luck.
All of our luck. We got the Mickey Mouse Inspirational Warrior and the Aurora Waking Sleeping Guardian Beauty something. Whatever.
Nailed it.
I don't remember.
That sounds like a Lorcanito handle.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? So anyways, that was our set champ season. I think we both learned a lot about both ourselves and our play preferences and stuff across the season. So I think, it's really cool to see your hard work really pay off because I mean, truly, this was the hardest you've worked at Lorcana and playing more games and improving ever. It really obviously had an impact on your success. And I think for me, it was really more of a season of learning what I don't want to do for set champs and learning to follow my own advice of playing decks that I find fun, even if I think that I can outsmart everything. Like, remember that I have a play preference, and that's okay.
I'm really impressed with you too, because you had a very distracted set where you played in a Pokemon regional tournament as well as a sector qualifier for Star Wars Unlimited. So you had a lot of.
I was all over the place.
You were all over the place. So. And before we move on, I have to shout out, we have a really fun little testing group. And of the 4 of us that played in set champs, we all brought home heroes. Our poor friend Brian got second place twice.
Yes, shout out to Brian. Double second place. He would have had 2 play mats in last season.
And our friend Craig in our group also took home a hero. So
the fun fact is amongst our testing group, and 1 or 2 people in our testing group ended up not able to play in any events, which was a huge bummer. But of our testing group, the only person to not get a top 8 in an event was me. Everyone else, 100% success rate on top 8s. So really cool for our little self-named purple cobras.
Yeah. All right. So that's set champs recap. Let's talk about what's coming up next. Reign of Jafar comes out this week. I know that we have, in our local area, we see a good mix of draft tournaments, starter deck challenges, sealed events. So we thought it would be helpful to run through it with you all. Some tips on how to build. I was so overwhelmed. Ian took me to the Floodborn release event, and I remember being so overwhelmed because I had no idea how to build a deck, and I still kind of know how to build a deck.
You got a lot better. You've gotten a lot better. Playing
really
limited
good
events,
at constructed events.
It's a different beast. It really is. It's a different skill set.
Yeah. So talk us through some of your advice on deck building, because you're pretty consistent on building some strong sealed decks.
I will say, I do have, and I'll brag about this, I've always, even since I was a kid, playing, Versus System and, Legend of the Five Rings stuff, I've always been good in limited formats. I can't tell you why. It's a completely different skill set. I feel like I have a good knowledge on what I'm good at and bad at in standard constructed, but when it comes to sealed, I just sort of, follow some basic things, and it tends to work out for me. I can't say I'm a genius at it, but I do think there's some fundamentals that I've picked up that will translate and immediately make pretty much anyone better at building decks in limited formats if you apply them.
I say, never underestimate the power of deck building in these situations. Sure, there's a luck component based on what you pull.
Right. A lot of that.
But knowing some strategies on decks is probably helpful.
Yeah. Well, so just to set the standard here, there are typically 3 ways that release events will be run. Check with your store if you're newer or casual player and you haven't been to one of these release events. Maybe just check their website, message them if they have a Discord or something, and just get an idea of what the format's going to be, because it can kind of help, so that you won't be quite so overwhelmed when you walk in. There is a starter deck challenge. This is probably one of the less common ones, but it is the one that our store likes to do a lot. when I'm running the events, because we have a lot of newer players that will come for the first time, and we have a lot of youth players that, the deck building part is way overwhelming for them. So what we do is we will do a starter deck. The starter decks will come with a pack of cards, but then we'll also give 3 additional packs, which spices it up. I've seen the starter deck challenge with just the deck in 1 pack. It's not that interesting usually, but with a few more extra packs, it really gets interesting. So, but what that does is allows you to really spice up the starter decks, while still you can just hand the basic deck without changing it to a kid.
Yeah.
Then there's sealed. And sealed tends to be 6 packs. You open all your packs in front of you and you build a deck from what you pull. Those are usually down to a 40 card minimum. And all of these limited formats, officially from Lorcana, all of these limited formats are no ink restrictions. So normally you have to have 2 ink colors. You don't have to follow that. You can have as many different ink colors as you want, which is good because you can never know, what you're going to pull in these things. So 40 card minimum for sealed. And then draft is interesting. It's usually not the day 1 release event, but then you'll often see a lot of people in the following weeks doing a lot of drafting because it's a really, really fun format.
Right.
The concept is that you'll get between 4 and 6 packs depending on the organizer in front of you, and you'll sit in groups of usually 4 or 8. And what you'll do is you'll open the packs, everyone will look at their pack, take a card, and then pass the pack to the left. And everyone will pass, and they'll take a card from that and keep passing until the pack is empty and you get handed the last card. And you'll do that until all the packs have been opened and pulled, and then you build the decks with that. So what that lets you do is have a little bit more agency over what you build your deck out of. So if you wanted to if you open your first pack and you get an awesome pirate themed card that works with pirates, then you can say, okay, I'm going to take this card and I'm going to keep my eye out in future packs. If any pirates get passed to me, it allows you to build a slightly more synergistic deck than if you just open 6 packs fully random.
Right.
Just be sure, if you've never played draft before, just ask before you start. If you get to keep all the cards you draft. Every once in a while, I've seen stores where they pull the rares back out and go into a prize pool. I hate that.
Sounds terrible.
But I've seen it as a way to stop people from just drafting the most valuable card from every pack.
My first draft, that's what happened to me, is I just drafted the most.
I shamelessly do that too, because I'm like, well, even if I pick the most valuable card from the first pack, I'll figure something else out later.
Yeah, I'll figure out a plan later.
Yeah. So those are the 3 formats. And then deck building is its own sort of art science. It's interesting. I have a process I use, and it doesn't mean it's the right way to go. But the first thing I do when I get ready to play is, whether it's a 40 card deck for draft or sealed or a 60 card for starter deck challenge, I always sleeve all my cards. Bring sleeves, guys. I know this seems obvious to probably most people listening, but if it's not obvious, please just bring sleeves. You want to protect those new pretty cards you got.
Yeah.
I'll set out the exact number of sleeves I need. So 40 or 60. And I'll have extras, but I generally try to keep my decks to the minimum card count for mathematically correct reasons. We don't have to get into that.
Ian's got very strong opinions.
I have strong opinions, but it's okay.
That's a whole nother episode
I don't judge people that do differently that much. So, so I'll set the exact number of card sleeves out. So then what I'll do is I will get all the cards, open my packs, have the fun. Ooh, wow, I pulled an enchanted, hopefully. And then I will separate the cards into 2 rows. I'll do characters and non-characters, and I'll sort them by cost. And that gives me like a visual cue on what do I have? Oh, I don't have anything like 6 or 7 or 8 drops. Yeah. Well, all right, I maybe I need a more aggressive strategy. Just kind of gets your thoughts going. But then what I do is I go through each pile one by one, and I will take out the obviously bad cards. Not every card is actually bad, but bad for the format. So these are often things that are like super situational. Yeah. Like, you know the type.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're like, ooh, like this is cool, but it's super niche. Yeah. I don't know, like, your puppies can also interact with your pirates, and you're like, that's never gonna happen realistically.
Right.
So I'll go through, and any cards that are obviously not gonna work, I just set aside.
Targeted keywords, things like that.
Yes, things that are just too niche to work. So I'll set all of those aside, and from there, I try to go through each pile again and look for what I call good stuff. So we've been talking about this recently.
Yeah.
The concept of good stuff.
I was interested. I was like, well, what do you define as good stuff?
It's kind of a nebulous like trading card game term that I've sort of adopted, and I know a lot of people use this as well. But it's just a concept for a card that is just good completely by itself. You can drop it into any deck, and it's fine. It's playable. It doesn't need anything else to be effective.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important when you're doing this to identify good stuff cards. Now, that's not to say every card that is standalone is a good stuff card. It's cards that are good standing alone, not average, but good. And there's a few things that I look for in limited formats that I qualify, as good stuff. Things that draw cards.
Yeah.
Almost always good.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine them not being good.
100%.
Things that do instant lore gain. Removal cards. Actions that deal damage, especially if they're relatively efficient. Keywords in these limited formats. Evasive, rush. Both of those two feel like almost auto includes. I mean, like being able to deal with an opponent's card and establish a body through rush is just incredibly impactful.
Yeah.
Resist, I've also found to be pretty darn effective.
Yeah.
Just as a way to make it harder on your opponent to deal with your characters. And then any other general powerful effects that don't rely on a specific scenario to be true.
Right.
I'm thinking of things like, out of context, but like Let It Go. Would be a great card that's just good stuff. It's really easy to use.
It's simple removal.
Simple, right.
Thinkable.
There's plenty of examples of these types of effects out there, whether they're actions, characters, whatever. The libraries, well, that's drawing cards too. McDuck Manor.
Right.
Just good
stats,
Just, really,
stuff.
really good stats and hard to deal with. So I'll immediately sleeve up those good stuff cards. I know I'm going to play them. Yeah. They're too good not to play. So if I look at anything, I'm like, well, this is automatically, just leave it. Because what that lets you do is get an estimation of how many cards you'll then have to fill. So from there, I look to see if I have any synergy. Synergy is the opposite of good stuff.
Synergy is a trap.
Synergy can be a trap.
Synergy is a trap in some limited formats.
It really can be.
Unless you have a lot of it.
Well, and I think that there's two different types of synergy.
Yeah.
So I think there's designed synergy.
Yeah.
And that's typically things that are like in the inventor package.
I was going to say, the starter decks typically have a lot of designed synergy. They are, they're built, they're tested, they're created, they're printed to be a deck that you could take off the shelf and play. And so they're already going to have some synergy there. So if it's a starter deck challenge, you probably want to stick with most of the cards in the starter deck and then buff it up with whatever you get in your packs.
True. And if you are playing a starter deck challenge, lean into the synergy.
Yeah.
See if you pulled anything from your other packs that can accent it. If you're playing something like Sealed, if you're drafting, sometimes you can draft synergy.
Sure. Yeah.
But if you're playing something like Sealed, odds are you're going to have a hard time finding enough of something for the synergy to work. And so synergy is when you have cards that only really are worth it when you put them together with something else.
Yeah.
There's also unintentional synergy, things that work together, not necessarily in like by design, usually these are things of different colors, but just inherently they complement each other. Something like a Rush Maui and a Rapunzel. You know, Rush Maui is going to immediately go in and get some damage on it, and the following turn you can Rapunzel it.
Right.
I mean, Rapunzel and Mr. Smee. There's plenty of examples in Standard Constructed of unintended synergy, but it makes it really compelling to put those cards together. So you can look for those too. That requires a little bit more game experience to quickly identify those things. So generally, if I don't find any synergy that I have tons of support for, I will take those more like niche cards and throw them out. Not in the trash, in a pile.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know.
Could you imagine?
But if I do have at least like 5 to 10 cards that work together, in a 40 card deck, I think that's enough. And you can consider putting that and adding that to the package and sleeve those up as well. So from there, the last thing I'll do is I'll lay out everything I sleeved, all my good stuff, any of the synergies I chose to include, and I will lay it out by cost again and see where my gaps in my curve are. The curve is basically, this is a super, just a definition for the super new players, but like the curve is your range of costs, and it's a curve because it actually tends to look kind of like a bell curve, in that like you tend to have a smaller amount of the cheapest, or in older games, you'd have a smaller amount of the cheapest things, and then as things get slightly more expensive, but still cheap, you have more of them, and then it tapers off as you have less of them. So the more expensive things you need less copies of because you can't play it till the end of the game. So I actually think that typically Lorcana tends not to have a curve, but it tends to be a slant in terms of the bell curve. But curving out is generally playing a 1-on-1, a 2-on-2, a 3-on-3, a 4-on-4. So you want to look at your curve and make sure that you have enough cards for the key costs. And I tend to define that for myself as costs 2 through 4 of characters. You want to make sure you have enough of those. 5 is fine too. But after, turn 4, you really want to make sure your 5+ cost cards are actually worth it. Like don't play a card just because it's cost 5 or 6. Play it because it has a good keyword like evasive or rush. Play it because it's got a good effect that helps you close games, or a lot of lore. Something with 3 or 4 lore. Oh man, I'm going to put that in there so I can win games at the end of the game. Generally, for a 60 card deck, I recommend that you put between 8 and 10 2, 3s, and 4s if you can. So that might mean saying, well, I've got 6 or so good stuff 2-drops. Let me see if I can find some 2-drops. They may just be stats. It may be a 2-cost 2-3. All right, I'll take a 2-cost 2-3 and put it in the deck. Fill it out with cards that maybe aren't quite as good, but make sure you have enough so that when you're playing, the worst thing that can happen to you is to not be able to play anything on turn 2. And that goes for 3-drops and 4-drops. 8 to 10, I think, is my personal sweet spot for a 60 card deck. For a 40 card deck, that goes down to between 5 and 7. And so try to fit those in. And those are characters. My rule of thumb with 1-drops, and I've had people ask me this before, I tend to suggest that they need to be well statted, have a good effect, or synergize with a synergy you're going for, or don't play them at all. I like being able to play a 1-drop on 1. It's nice, but they're so bad in limited formats to find at the end of the game because they just don't do enough.
Right.
And because typically limited formats have so little card draw, you want to be top decking something of value every turn after turn 6 or so when you're maybe capped at 6 ink, So I try to not do too many 1-drops, but some that are like obviously good. In this set, the Captain Hook, Forceful Duelist reprint, definitely automatically play that. It's just a 3-2 on attack. Amazing. I think you can also play, maybe if it's got a shift line that you have, then play that. But generally I try to not play 1-drops that aren't good in and of themselves. And then for gap filling, this is sort of a underrated thing too. If you're looking at your 4-drops and you're like, oh man, I've got like 4, but I want to get a few more. And you're evaluating, random cards to just fill the rest of the deck out. I think it's a mistake to overlook just solid stat blocks. I've won some release events and sealed events. I actually won a sealed event at Atlanta, like a sealed side event at Atlanta DLC with Ulf. I put a bunch of those dumb mimes. That's a 4-3 quests for 2.
Yeah.
But just the stats and the questing and the pressure weirdly helped me close a lot of games.
Yeah.
So look for those big stat blocks, even if they don't have a good effect or any effect at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my process.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a pretty detailed process. I know. It was funny. I was thinking, typically at our store we do a starter deck event, and so I was like, I actually don't even know what the starter decks are. So I had to look them up while you were talking about it. I was like, he's starting to talk about it. I should just start planning ahead.
Well, that's a great bit of advice, though.
Yeah.
If you are going and you're playing a starter deck challenge,
Yeah, take a look at the decks ahead of time.
Yeah, and it'll help you get an idea of what's in there, what cards you want to throw out, and what cards you want to keep.
Right.
If you're playing sealed, and this is if you care about performing well, it doesn't hurt to go and take a quick scroll through Dreamborn. Filter it so it's only set 8.
Check out the new cards.
Just take a look. Just glance at them. You don't have to study rigorously. And if you're really intent on winning or you're going to a store which has a big prize pool, go check out. A lot of Lorcana YouTubers will put out guides for sealed where they will evaluate certain cards and say, look to include or draft, if you're playing draft, these cards because these are going to be some of the best options at these costs. So if you really want to dive deeper into that, there's resources elsewhere. Obviously, we're not going to get into that. But I think that, again, sealed is a lot of making the best with what you got, which I find really fun. And I think if I'm going to leave you with a parting advice, like just take a second to give something a second read. Like before you throw something out and say this is crap, just give it a second read and make sure you're not missing something. Obviously, new cards, it's easy to get overwhelmed by that.
Yeah.
But usually if you follow sort of a process like mine, you will be able to quickly identify what is amazing and just sleeve it up, and you don't have to think about that.
Yeah.
Once it's sleeved up, you put those cards over here and you don't think about that till the very end when you check out your curve. But as you're evaluating cards, before you toss them in the bad pile, just give them an extra second to read. I guarantee you'll have time. The whole reason I have my process is because I don't want to worry about time when I'm building my deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of the new set, so once you've gone and you've won your local release event, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of new cards that you need to open. And so do you have any advice for those that are newer to the game, maybe are newer to collecting? This is any advice on, it's no longer playground rules of I'll trade you a rare for a rare.
Yeah.
What advice would you offer?
Well, if you're a brand new player, it's tough because you won't always know what you're looking at. I think in that scenario, the best thing you can do is find someone in your community that you trust and somebody, that the rest of the community trusts and looks up to, and talk to them and say, hey, here's what I got. Did I get anything good? What should I do? How do I build a deck? Where should I start? Yeah. And I think, and that is something that we hope that this show will be able to help provide as well. And in the future, I think we're probably going to look at some budget decks for Reign of Jafar that players can build with mostly rotation-proof stuff.
Yeah.
But for now, I say just lean on your community members, the people that are trustworthy, and ask them for advice. I have some more detailed advice for the casual and budget players or the new players that are really, really getting into it.
Yeah.
Like these are people that are like all in on their hobby or that have TCG experience before.
Yeah.
My suggestions to start is to, if you're trying to build your collection and get a really good deck so that you'll be able to start competing, the best thing you can do is don't try to collect everything.
Yeah.
This is really common, a really common suggestion in digital card games where there's some sort of monetary system or there's some sort of like you have to grind games to get resources to get cards. Here, it's just how much money do you have? I mean, if you really want to spend your money on everything, do it. I mean, buy all the singles, get all the stuff, buy lots of product. But if you're in the situation where like you have a certain budget that you're trying to follow and you're just trying to get as much, economic value out of your stuff as possible, and you're trying to make sure you are a good steward of your finances, I think that trying to get everything is a really big mistake I see a lot of new players do. They kind of, anything that's rare, they hoard and they don't want to trade.
Yeah.
And they don't want to sell. And I think that's a mistake. The best time to try to trade is the first week or two of a new set opening.
Yeah.
Because past that, the competitive players are going to figure out what they have, what they don't have, and what they need to order from TCG Player.
Yep.
But if you catch them in that first week or two window, you can often trade a new card that they don't have in their binder yet for old cards that you might have missed from other sets. And that can be really helpful to get caught up because sometimes, and I speak for myself, but when I have a new player who has a new legendary that I want, and I have a bunch of stuff in my binder that they need from older sets, I'm going to overcompensate for them because I really want this new card and I want them to get caught up. I want them to have the stuff. That's what our trade binder is for.
Yeah.
And so obviously check the market price on TCG Player. You can do that on your phone. Just go to TCG Player, type in the card, and if you scroll down, it'll say a market price, and that'll give you a rough average. If you want to double check that, you can see what people are listing them for as like a rough idea of how much a card is worth. But honestly, that is the best thing you can do in those first 2 weeks as a budget player is wheel and deal. Figure out what you are trying to build towards, or maybe you pick 2 or 3 colors you really like, and the colors that aren't those, trade away the legendaries, trade away the stuff, because the best thing for players who want to play the game and get good at the game is to get a good deck built and start learning it and spending time with it and slowly adapting it. The people that just jump all over the place and build, half put together decks with not enough cards of synergy and incomplete play sets of things, they get frustrated and confused and overwhelmed and they don't know why they're struggling. And it's easy for people to say, well, build a better deck, but for people playing on a budget, it often comes down to getting the right cards, which means being willing to get rid of the cards that you don't want and that don't benefit you. So I do that. You can also often sell cards to local stores that sell singles. So you might not get 100% of market value. In fact, you probably won't. But if you got a bunch of cards and nobody wants to trade, maybe go to a store nearby that sells Lorcana singles and get 60% of their value up front that you can then reinvest into singles on TCG Player. Yeah. As far as TCG Player goes, and you can take this one, I think, when you are looking to buy and sell, there's a few rules that go with new sets. So when you're selling a card, what is your sort of guidance on, like, you open a bunch of stuff and you get a new legendary that everybody seems to be raving about? What should you do?
I think the best thing to do is to sell it high. So the prices are going to be the highest that they are early on. And so if it's not something, you pull an enchanted that you don't intend to collect and keep, it's your lucky day.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. We sell almost all of our enchanteds when we pull them because we're looking to get product to build out our collection for competitive play. And the enchanteds are beautiful, but I won't play with them because I'm too scared to play with them. So they're just going to sit on a shelf. So, or even legendary. So if you don't have someone that you can trade with locally, go ahead and list it and sell it and see if you can turn a profit on it and then turn that back around into buying some singles that you do need. So
selling on TCG Player is nowhere near as intimidating as it might seem.
I
think the big thing is just simply, listing it at a fair price, and eventually, usually it will at some point sell. And then just, at some point, you know what we should do? Show how to package a TCG player order if you wanted to sell. That would be an interesting thing. You can find plenty of guidance out there on YouTube on how to send a card out to be mailed. But even if you're going to your local store and you're selling a single, I think you're right.
I think even if it's back to your local store, or like I said, the value of a card is going to be the highest that first week or so.
Oh, for sure.
Before, competitive play has sort of settled the meta out or things like that. So, you pulled a shiny Maui Shark and you don't play Ruby. So you're like, hey, this is... You're the cool kid on campus. So, you can trade it for maybe 5 cards that you need from previous sets, or even the current set. So
especially there is a little nuance there around cards that the community preordains as extremely meta relevant.
Sure, yeah.
Sometimes those cards come in out of the gates really hot, very expensive. I have occasionally seen them rise a little. It's more often that they eventually fall and settle to somewhere in the middle. So I think that you're right. General guidance, sell. I think that, and that's only if you want to sell or if you don't need that card for a deck you want.
Yeah.
I think that every once in a while...
if you're a collector, ignore everything that we said.
Yeah, for the collectors out there, we can talk collecting and storage at some other point.
That's a totally different beast.
Right, we'll bring KJ on to talk about storage.
She's got the system. She's got it down to a science.
Yeah. But I think that, and then the flip side of that, when you're buying... What would you say to somebody who's like raring to go, ready to get their deck built, and they go to TCG Player week 1? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to give it a minute.
Yeah.
As Ian's probably heard before. However, I'll give Ian credit. Ian's a mastermind of watching, some people trade stocks, some people trade cards. We all have our vices.
That's right.
But
it's rare for the mail to come without a card in it.
We are frequent flyers. If only TCG Player had a rewards program.
They need that. Yeah, can I get a stamps?
Yeah.
I need a stamp card for free. TCG Player. Yeah.
But I think, take a deep breath and give it a minute. Usually we don't buy singles for the first few weeks because, in fact, you shouldn't bother with it. Enjoy playing with what you have, maybe the first couple of weeks.
Yeah.
If you're really limited on what you want to play with a new deck, that's a great excuse to get a starter deck.
Yeah.
If you don't have a collection, or you have a very limited collection and you also can't buy a whole bunch of product, but if it's a great excuse to kind of get creative and play with what you pull. And then when you figure out what deck it is that you want to play, maybe you see something at League you think is really cool. You really want to give Ruby Steel a try. It might be its season.
Yeah.
I think that it's, take a deep breath, give it a few weeks. Those cards won't go anywhere. And those prices are going to definitely come down.
Yeah, especially as people figure out what's good and what's not good, or not good within the scope of the greater, highest level of competition. The cards that are the more fun cards or somewhere in the middle, they will tend to fall. And, usually you can get some of the rares and super rares that are not being played at the highest level, but they can fill out your fun decks or your home brews. You can usually get those pretty darn cheap. So, and then the other thing, take the time, and I push this because I care. Take the time, instead of immediately hitting the trade block on TCG Player and spending too much money, just message your local community Discord. Hey, I'm looking for a Captain Hook Pirate King. Does anybody have some for trade? Here's what I have. And that will help you get what you want early so you can have fun and play with it while it's fresh. And then go back later, and if you decide that if you traded away your whatever Tinkerbell for the Captain Hook, and later you can go back and buy the Tinkerbell if you want to fill out your collection as a single. So yeah, that's our advice. And again, if you're a collector or you're just having fun with it, you don't have to play this min-maxy game. But I just have I included this because I ran into a lot of new players that do want to get their new decks built quickly, but they're on a budget and they don't know the best strategies for getting the maximum value for their time and money. Yeah.
For sure. All right.
Well, I think that about does it for this episode.
I'm too excited now. I want to start opening packs.
I know. We're almost there. Again, check out your local areas. Go attend your release events at the local stores. Buy local from your card shops and stuff. Support the friendly local game stores. It's really important for our community to support those stores. Big box stores will have it a couple weeks later if you decide you want to buy more. But go support the local game stores. Go out, meet people in your community. That's what it's all about. And tune back in next week because we're going to have some new segments. Next week, we're going to be giving our first impressions of Reign of Jafar, as well as our favorite brews from week 1. And we'll be doing a review, hopefully, of Palace Heist. I think we'll be able to get our hands on it. Pin in that. At some point, we'll do a Palace Heist review.
We'll eventually
But if we can get our hands on it this weekend, we will be reviewing it. And then I'm also going to be doing deck building fundamentals for Standard Constructed. As sort of our coaching corner. This is something Lindsay and I have been really getting into is what makes a deck a deck. And and without getting overly technical about it, the fundamentals, the core pillars of building, because we're going to get into Reign of Jafar and we're going to want to build. So that's what we're going to cover next week. Also, check out on the Camp Quest YouTube channel where you're probably watching this. Check out later this week. It should actually be tomorrow from when this is publishing. Will be our 15 decks in 15 minutes. Lindsay, Gibby, and I are going to put together a different deck featuring some of the new cards from the set for every single ink combination. And we really always enjoy putting that together.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We got some new stuff. We've got some buff ups of some old color combinations that they started talking about last set that have gotten so much better with the new cards. So, but also a lot of really exciting, spicy new things. So. We got big old giant Mickey Mouse.
I know you're excited about Big Mick.
Big Mick. 10 for 10.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for watching. We can't wait to get back on the recording and do it again next week. But in the meantime, good luck with all your pulls, and we will see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.